Happy Friday, everyone. I'm Nuria.
And I'm Frank.
And welcome to another episode of ITT Podcast, which stands for In This Together Podcast. Our podcast is our honest take on relationships, love, and marriage, with the aim of sharing our views and experiences for you to take from it whatever you need.
So whether you're single, dating, in a relationship, or happily married, there is something in it for you.
Hi everyone. Today's episode is called Do Long Distance and International Relationships Work? We'll define what constitutes a long distance relationship. What is the difference between a long distance relationship and an international relationship? Do they even work? Are they really worth it? So we'll give you some statistics on that, as well as some pros and cons for each. And we'll let you know what our personal opinions are on both long distance and international relationships. Okay, so as the world becomes more and more connected, people are finding love and partners from all around the world. We can all probably attest to that. The world is definitely opening up a lot more. Social media has been a big part of this, and there's a lot more communication across different people in different parts of the country, let alone different parts of the world. And we're a lot more likely to fall in love with people who don't live where we are. So we figured this is a good topic for us to touch on because it brings its own challenges, and there are, I would say, preconceived notions when it comes to long distance relationships. Yeah. I know before we did any research on this for this discussion, I had preconceived notions. I had my opinion of what I thought was going on in terms of long distance relationships. And it was interesting in terms of statistics to realize that, well, it's not actually as clear cut as I thought it was. Yeah. So why do you think this topic is important, or why is it important to you, Frank?
It's important to me because I believe people should understand the pros and cons of getting into a long distance relationship. So I think it's important that we discuss this because there are lots of people out there that think if you're in a long distance relationship, the chances are it will not work out for you. So I think it's important that we discuss it and we put out some stats on what information is actually out there.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to explore whether or not that is true. The sentiment regarding long distance relationship is probably that they don't work. And also, a lot more people are in long-distance relationships. So it's interesting to cover what are some of the things that they could face and give our views on that. I mean, the question is, do they work? And we're going to answer that based on what we think and the research that we've done.
Yeah.
So firstly, what constitutes a long-distance relationship? So a long-distance relationship typically is a romantic relationship between partners who are geographically separated from one another. Now, there's a lot of debate probably about how separated is separated, how far constitutes long distance. Is a 1 hour drive long distance? Is it another part of the country? Is that long distance? And then that's why we've thrown in international, because we recognize that international relationships have a different dynamic from long distance relationships. Yeah. There's probably an added dynamic there as well. That we want to touch on. So what are some of the stats? So we were doing some research on the key long distance relationship facts, and we were quite surprised actually. So you'll find that there's not that many studies done on long distance relationships, and it's not a heavily investigated area. But where it has been kind of investigated and stats and things like that, there is some interesting things that we learned along the way when looking into it. So for example, more than 90% of people living in the UK and Europe have been in a long distance relationship.
Wow.
That's really high,
wow.
Isn't it? And 10% of married couples started together as a long distance relationship, marriage statistics indicate. Some of these statistics, by the way, are from a 2018 survey by the New York Post, and some of them are from UK studies, and the website for that was todateforlove.com, and it just gave out some really interesting facts on long distance from a number of different studies, and those are more related to UK statistics. I think the most interesting statistic was the 2018 survey from the New York Post found that 60% of long-distance relationships last.
Wow.
Academic researchers reported that around 37% of long-distance couples break up within 3 months of becoming geographically closer.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's actually interesting. Couples are just as likely to break up during the distance phase as they are after the distance ends. So the statistics actually showed that a lot more long distance relationships last. And even in the UK studies, it found that the success rate of long distance relationships is 58%. So it's actually really interesting that around that 60% mark is how much they last. So it seems to suggest that long distance relationships are more likely to last than relationships that are not long distance. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, that goes against what I originally thought.
Yeah, same here. It was also interesting that the absence of physical intimacy is the biggest obstacle for 66% of people in a long distance relationship. So that's interesting. But I think the big thing here is that the statistics doesn't actually show what we thought it would, that long distance relationships don't last. In fact, they're more likely to last. So international relationships. An international relationship is a lot more different. And I think that international relationships are a fairly new thing, if you really think of it in terms of society over the last 100 years or so. What were the chances before the boom of technology for you to be in a relationship with someone in another country?
Yeah, highly unlikely.
Yeah. It's a different dynamic because you're more likely to meet someone who's in a completely different country and actually sustain a relationship because of technology, because of social media, because of access, easy travel, access to travel, compared to like 100 years ago.
Or even 50 years ago.
Yeah. How far away is 50? What, 1970s? Yeah, people didn't travel like that. So that's why we wanted to kind of throw in international relationships, because long distance relationships have probably always kind of been something where maybe you grew up in a different town or, something that's a bit different and you're kind of coming together and then you go back to your respective towns. Like, for example, maybe you met at university or something like that. And then you're making plans to kind of find a home together. Whereas now it's a lot more likely that you'll find someone from a completely different part of the world, maintain a relationship and then have to try and figure out which country you're going to live in and
how you're going to sustain the relationship and keep the relationship going. Yeah.
So that's why we wanted to talk about that. I think the difference between long distance and international relationships is long distance, in my opinion, is a relationship where the person is within the same country, but they're probably different towns, different counties, that kind of thing. In America, it would probably be different states and stuff like that. So in a way, international relationships are always long distance relationships, but long distance relationships are not always international relationships. That's right. The distance when it comes to international relationships is that you're in a different country completely. What constitutes a long distance relationship as well for me is the ability to get there and back on the same day and spend some significant time together. So on this debate about what is a long distance relationship, some people are like, oh, an hour drive is long distance, or all of that. What do you think? Because I lean more towards, if I can get to you on the same day, spend a significant amount of time with you and return where I live in the same day, then I don't think that's long distance. Flights have made it interesting because you can get to France
in a day. So you can fly to Belgium and be back on the same day. You can spend some time, quality time, and be back on the same day.
It's money,
That's
isn't
the
it?
kind of life you want to live.
So then I guess what this is why the debate is all the rage, because what is a long distance relationship? Because to me, I would say, if I don't have to travel too many hours and I can get back on the same day, then I don't really think we're long distance. But then maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, but you have to factor in how often can you do that?
Yeah.
That's another thing, because if someone travel to Scotland twice a week, it's not possible though, is it?
And it's in the same country. It's still in the United Kingdom.
So it's still is that still classed as a long distance relationship?
Well, what about if I live in London and you live in Birmingham? It's a 2-hour train ride.
Yeah.
Birmingham in the UK.
Yeah. But how often can you do that? You probably do that once a week. That's about it.
But if you can see each other every week, is that long distance?
It is long distance. Personally, if I can't get access to you today or tomorrow,
what do you need access for?
No, okay. If I cannot see you in person today and tomorrow, then I would consider you do live far away.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I think if you can't see each other every day,
yeah.
If you wanted to,
yeah, then it is.
I think that's a better way. Yeah, that's a better way to kind of define it. If you can't see each other consecutively,
physically,
if you can't travel to each other, physically every day, then you're probably long distance.
Yeah.
But there's people living, someone's in Brixton, someone's in Campbell, and they can't get to each other.
They still don't get to each other every day.
But I guess that's by choice, so. Yeah, that's by choice. Yeah. Okay, so does it work? Do they work? Long distance, international? There's no stats on international relationships.
No, surprisingly.
Not that we were able to find, but maybe we didn't dig that hard either.
Yeah, we did our research and didn't
come across. And I think because long distance is kind of lumped in, international and long distance tend to be lumped in together. Yeah. But we have a bit of an understanding of the difference between long distance and international and the different dynamics, which we'll talk about a bit later. So that's why we kind of want to make sure that they're separate as well, so that we can cover the pros and cons a bit more differently.
So when you ask, does it work? I would say the long distance relationship, like, the example you gave, if you lived in London and I lived in Birmingham, would that work? I think that could work. I mean, you can see from the stats, was it 80%?
90%. But have been, not 90% of relationships are long distance.
Well, have been. Yeah, have been. So that the stat says it all, really. They do work.
Yeah. The statistics suggest they do work. Basically, the statistics suggest that they have just as much chance of working as a relationship where there's no long distance. Why do you think that is?
I think some of it could be the connection that, you may have with that person without physically being connected to them. So you get to imagine getting to know someone without being physical with them. I think it takes that relationship to a different level in terms of like you really get to know that person. And it's not just something that's physical. It's more of a, I don't know how to put it. It's more of a kind of thing. So
it's more intimate.
Yes, exactly. It's more intimate. So I think that's probably why it works. So that when you then see that person, the connection is already been built. Yeah.
I think also when people start a long distance relationship, they know what they're getting in for. And so they probably put a lot more effort into it because they really committed to the relationship. So there's a level of commitment there that's probably a lot higher when you're in a long distance relationship and you both know what you're trying to achieve, which is to eventually be together. Yeah. So you're kind of united in this common goal to be with each other. And I think that has its cons as well, quite significantly, because you're so concentrating on this kind of desire to be together properly. How much of the relationship is an actual functioning relationship where you're getting to know each other in the way that you need to? Yeah. Because at that point, it's almost as though you're kind of united by, and maybe this is why maybe I have a bit of preconceived notions about long distance relationships, because I feel like you're being united on a common goal of being together, which can be a bit lofty and a bit fairy tale-ish and a bit unrealistic, depending on how far apart you are. And sometimes it's not unrealistic, but because the focus is so much on that goal that you kind of don't take the time to really invest in the relationship as a relationship, because there's this big factor. It's kind of like when you're younger and you have a boyfriend and your parents don't want you to be together. Yeah. The world is your parents in that long distance relationship. It's like because you know you're not meant to be together, you fight so hard to be together that when you're actually together, you realize, actually, I don't even necessarily want to be with this person. It was more about fighting to be with this person. Yeah. And so I've always had that kind of that kind of perception of it. And
I agree. And that's one of the challenges I think long distance relationships will face in terms of, you get to know each other. You don't really live together. So when it's time for you to actually settle down together, I believe you will find that you're getting to know this person all over again. Because it's one thing to have a long distance relationship. Yeah. And then it's another thing to be in close proximity with that person and then finding out their habits, finding out how they really are living with them. That could...
And not necessarily living with them, but seeing them regularly. Because some people don't live together before
they might get used to just living. Some people, they might actually get used to being in a relationship from a distance, like, I love you and blah, blah, blah. But when they're in close proximity, that may not necessarily be the case.
Yeah. I mean, didn't the statistics say that a lot of the relationships break up once the distance is actually no longer an issue? Mm-hmm. So when it comes to long distance relationship, they're likely to last, but one of the main causes of the breakup is actually when that dynamic changes and it's no longer the long distance. So that's quite interesting as well. Whereas a relationship that's not long distance has the same likelihood to break up, but it probably won't be because of any change in the distance dynamic. Obviously, it'll probably be something like disagreements or falling out of love or, things like that. Whereas the distance factor can be quite a significant factor.
Yeah. And for me, it could be some time wasting in there as well, because, if you're in a relationship with someone and it's been a year, 2 years, when you then get together, things you could have found out the first couple of months, you may start finding those things out as you get with them. As you're now living together. So you start finding out things that you probably would have found out if you lived closer to each other.
Yeah. I mean, with that being said, what are some of the pros and cons of long distance relationships? And we're staying in the long distance relationship space at the moment. So as part of our research, there was a array of cons, which is interesting considering that
they lost.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, so what's going on with all these cons?
Yeah, but you can see why these cons have been listed. And,
So we'll start with the pros. Yeah. So, like you touched on some of them, like a more emphasis on emotional connection because there's limited physical connection.
Building of trust. Yeah. Yeah. Time to focus on yourself.
And your independence. Yeah. I mean, if we just go back to building of trust a bit, like you're more likely to be trusting of each other because you're united in that common goal.
That's true.
You talk a lot more probably. A lot more time is spent talking and things like that. So you build this kind of relationship, and with that relationship comes trust. You still have time to focus on yourself, your own goals. You have that sense of independence and autonomy still. And that's one thing about couples that are not in long distance. Sometimes because you can see each other all the time, you do see each other all the time and you don't give each other enough space. And you kind of, your life just gets thrown into this kind of...
It's like a deep end.
Whirlwind,
Yeah, it's like you're chucked in it.
And it's like constant and all of that. So whereas that's less likely in a long distance relationship because, you're not around each other 100% of the time. So...
Yeah, stronger communication. I like that one. I think it will allow you to build your communication skills. Yeah. Strengthen how you guys communicate together. Yeah. That's really important.
And I guess because you're not with each other, you're relying only on each other's words.
Yeah.
So you can't look at body language. There is no, why are you being off today? It doesn't exist. It's all about words. So your communication becomes really strong. Yeah. If you're doing it right.
That's the thing.
Different experiences as well is a pro in that you're likely to make more of an effort when you actually visit each other. So you're probably like
excitement.
You're probably likely to go somewhere really nice, do something really cool, have some unique experiences together. Maybe you meet up in a specific country and you travel together. So there's like a richness to your relationship that may not be there with a couple that just Netflix and chill.
There's nothing wrong with Netflix and chill. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with Netflix and chill, but I mean, just going to each other's houses and hanging out is not as adventurous and as dynamic as when you have to plan, a week that you're going to spend together because you're not going to see each other again for like a whole month.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
So that's a potential pro.
Pro, definitely.
Cons. And I mean, if you're thinking of getting into a long distance relationship or you've just gotten into one, and so these pros and cons should help. But there's a lot of cons. Just be aware. I mean,
where do we start?
I mean, I'll just roll them off because there's quite a few. But like loneliness, obviously. Temptation. You know, there's this temptation with other people that are closer by. Jealousy as well. Not knowing what's going on with your partner. What else are some of the things on there?
Could be expensive.
It probably would be.
It probably would be. Yeah,
traveling
up and down.
Gifts, sending each other gifts and stuff. So it would be expensive. I guess that's a pro as well. You could get lots of gifts while you try and kind of. It could be quite romantic.
It could be.
While you try and shower each other with love, but then it could be quite expensive.
I like this one. Difficulty in resolving conflict. Yeah, I think that's a very strong con because it will become more challenging to actually resolve anything over the phone. And how'd you get over that? Yeah, it's easier to just let things kind of stew over and kind of fester. Intimacy, obviously, you're not physically there, so you can't physically be physical in a physical environment, which could lead to temptation and jealousy. Technology
exhaustion. So Frank, for example, is not a big social media person. He's not a big telephone person.
That will not work for me.
The technology, like constantly being on the phone, FaceTime, or video calls, WhatsApp calls.
Nightmare.
So that can be quite exhausting. Difficult to be spontaneous as well, in the sense that you can't just pop up at your... I'm laughing because we recently, popping up is one of those funny things that we always laugh about. But you can't just pop up at your girlfriend's house. You can't pop up at your boyfriend's house. You can't always be spontaneous and be like, I'm taking you to dinner tonight. Get ready by 8 o'clock. It's like, no, most things have to be planned.
No.
That could be a pro if you don't trust your partner. Because then it's like... It could be a pro if you're a dodgy long distancer. You're like, they can't just be spontaneous and pop up on me.
True. Give you a chance to start a new family.
You're crazy. Emotional roller coaster. Oh my goodness. You see each other
and then
you're so excited.
And then after a while it's gone again. We had that a bit. I mean, we weren't crazy long distance in the beginning. We were in different universities, as I've said before, in the same country, but we were a bit 4 hours away from each other. And you know, we would visit each other and we would you say there was a lot of emotional roller coaster?
A bit, because when you would have to leave, usually on the same day, or it was sad, and I would make you feel guilty.
I know.
I was never crying, if I don't pretend.
Come here, you big baby.
I wasn't crying. No. Did I cry? I don't think I cried. I think I was really sad sometimes.
You probably cried after I left. I never saw you cry, but I'm sure you cried when I left.
I don't think I cried. I think I was just really sad.
So you would say that you went through a lot of emotional roller coaster. Was it just like...
No, I don't think it wasn't like a big deal because we saw each other like every couple of weeks.
Yeah, true.
But it was sad in the sense that, you know, when you would leave each other, you knew that you're not going to see each other for weeks. Sometimes. And obviously we were at uni. We were there to study. We were not there to build we were not trying to play house. We were trying to get to know each other while studying and doing other stuff. So we have a bit of experience on this long distance, but it's definitely long distance and not international. But it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster when you're I would
say so.
You're so happy to see each other, and then you have to be separated, and you're kind of sad for a day or two.
But it does give you something to look forward to again. I guess that's another pro of it. Like,
and you do miss each other a lot more. I mean, they do say. It's funny because they say distance makes the heart grow fonder, and then they say out of sight, out of mind.
True.
So which one is it?
I know, right? I know. I'm not sure.
I think for us it was distance makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah, I would say.
Was that what it was for you? Was it outside? Until you saw me again. You're like, yeah, I have a whole girlfriend.
Outside of mine. No, but you were always there though. Like we always spoke to each other.
Yeah.
Always like texting or messaging each other. So yeah, there was quite a lot of technology exhaustion, I would say.
For you? Is that what you had?
Yeah. Quite a bit, but yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Another con is potentially growing apart, not being part of each other's lives in that intertwined way.
Yeah.
Could mean that you've just got things going on and it's
become disconnected.
Yeah. You can actually, especially if technology exhaustion comes into it, you can end up feeling a bit like, oh, I can't do any more of this relationship. Another con is like Frank mentioned before, it's harder to really get to know each other's habits. A lot of that is like reliant on you being around each other and being like, oh, is this how he acts?
Yeah. And that really takes living with that person, I would say.
You think so?
Yeah. I would say.
Yeah. Probably. And fairy tale complex as well. Like I said before, you can end up in a situation where you have this dream of when we will finally be able to be together, and that's all you guys are focusing on, this kind of fairy tale, which is not always based on reality. And it's very easy for you to build a picture of your relationship which is based on what it will be rather than what it actually is.
Yeah.
So, and it's also possible for that picture to be different for both of you, but you don't really know that it's a different picture.
Yeah. That is true. That's true.
Yeah, so that's some pros and cons. I think the cons outweigh the pros, and that's why I always felt like long distance relationships are like, eek, avoid if you can. But it's interesting how we started off long distance, so we can't really, we were long distance for 3 years while we were at uni as well, so it's not like we weren't really, we saw each other, but not frequently.
Not frequently, no. I think that long distance relationships aren't that bad. I think it's international relationships that are dangerous. No.
Frank has started.
No.
You are going there.
If you need to go there, let's go there. Because if you're in the same country, right, a couple of hours travel isn't a problem. We mentioned not being spontaneous and whatnot. You can be spontaneous if you leave a couple of hours. I surprised you several times coming down to your university.
Yeah, pop it up.
But if you lived in Abuja,
wow,
how am I going to surprise you? How would that happen?
You can. I'm sure there's people out here with money.
Is it 8 hours or 6 hours flight? I have to book my ticket.
I think it's 6 hours.
I have to book my ticket. I have to then book a driver.
Are you going to do all of that with the accent?
I'm just saying. No, I'm just saying.
Now that he's going to Abuja, his accent has resurfaced.
I think long distance relationships in the same country
are
manageable. I just think when it becomes international, I think those cons. I think it increases. That's what I think. It's amplified. Yes,
I think that's what you mean. Yeah, it's like. These are cons times 10.
Things like the jealousy, the temptation, the loneliness is even bigger. Because if you lived in Birmingham and I lived in Manchester,
if you really want to see,
really want to see you, like if I want to get my hands on you, I'll get on the National Express. I'll be down there, get on a fast train. I can be there in like an hour and 15 minutes or whatever.
2 hours.
Is it really? No, I don't think it is.
It's about 2 hours.
Okay, 2 hours I'll be there. But if you were in Congo, how am I going to come I can't.
Yeah.
All I could do is a phone call to you. So it's like...
Or a video call. FaceTime. Exactly. Come on, let's not be old. Let's move with the time.
But that's nothing though. That doesn't...
Yeah.
So... Yeah,
it's true. It's amplified. I mean, that is a good point to segue into international relationships. And like we said, there's not that many stats for them because they're kind of lumped in with long distance. But I
wonder why there isn't enough stats for them because
nobody's saying
nobody's reported to nobody's turned up to report any stats.
Let's put it this way. So we've gone through the pros and cons of long distance relationship. International relationships, like Frank is saying, are the same pros and cons, probably amplified, and probably with their own additional cons, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because I always say one of the issues okay, let me just be all the way honest. I am not a fan of international relationships in any shape or form. And I don't know if that's harsh, but I'm Congolese. I've been to Congo. I remember going to Congo and there were men interested in me. And Frank has been to Nigeria. There's women interested in him.
Mm-hmm.
You could go abroad, anywhere and meet someone. But to me, personally, I could, not just Africa, I can go to France, I can go anywhere, America, and meet someone. To me, it's just always been a no-no. If I'm not in the same country as you, I'm not trying to even start anything. Don't start nothing, there won't be. Because I always felt like those cons are just so amplified for me. I just always felt like that. I just always felt like it's just going to be so much work. And this is why they probably do last when you do commit to them.
Yeah.
Because, you're so committed to them working out that you put in 110%.
Yeah.
And so maybe there is nothing to worry about. But for me, I've always felt like the amount of effort I'm going to put into that relationship, and I'm going to have to deal with things like loneliness, temptation, jealousy, costs of traveling. It's like, why? Why can't I just meet someone local?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that sounds terrible, but I'm not a fan of them. So if I was talking to my daughter right now, for example, I wouldn't advise it because I just feel like, why? Why do you have to throw in all these complexities?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, they work, clearly. They can work. But I think especially with international, it's like...
I think when they say the long distance relationships, I'm not sure they're talking about international relationships.
Not necessarily, yeah.
Because I think if there were stats for that, I think it will be less than what we've read out.
For long distance? You think international would be...
Yeah.
So you think they don't work as much?
I don't think that they work. And from my experience as well, I don't think from relationships that I've seen, I don't think they work.
Why do you not think they necessarily work?
Because what you've just said, all the cons amplified. It's like 1,000 more. Yeah. So I don't believe they work at all.
Interesting. And I'm sure there's lots of people listening to this right now or will listen to this that are like, me and my husband or me and my wife, we were in completely different countries and we met and we now live in the same country. Because that's one of the things about international relationship. There's always the decision on, okay, what country are we going to live in? Yeah. Let's now live in the same country.
Yeah. And another thing as well, right? What we've spoken about in previous podcasts where we've discussed setting the boundaries, setting the standard. When you're looking at red flags, these things are missed. These things are not addressed. These things are not identified. These things are not put in place because you're in another country.
Yeah.
That brings a different challenge to the relationship.
Yeah. And I think also, I mean, let's just address the elephant in the room as well. Another dynamic with international relationships is sometimes, and this is not always the case, but sometimes there is one person in the relationship with the upper hand in terms of which country they live in. Yeah. And that is, whether it's a preference in terms of the couple would prefer to live in that one's country, in terms of, maybe someone from the UK versus someone from the US. They both would rather live in the US, or be it, from Africa versus the UK or Europe. There's the upper hand there sometimes in terms of dynamics. And we all know, especially being African, that there's a lot of people in Africa that are not honest when it comes to being in relationship with people in Western countries. Yeah. How many aunties and uncles am I aware of in terms of Congolese aunties and uncles that have been bamboozled by people in Congo? Where, they thought it was a genuine relationship. And it really wasn't.
Yeah. So to summarize, you're looking for passport. All right, then.
I'm trying to find the most diplomatic way.
No. Let's be straightforward.
And it's not always the case, but that dynamic becomes difficult.
Difficult for you to find true love. Yeah, when you talk about international relationships, you will have to question everything you see, everything you hear.
Yeah, especially when there's the dynamic, especially when there's the passport dynamic, citizenship dynamic.
And then when you meet that person that actually genuinely loves you, you have that doubt. That's the thing. Just that one person that says, baby, I love you.
Why did he have that?
It ruins it for everybody.
Why does it have to be a Nigerian accent? He could.
I said, baby. I was saying the Congolese guy, baby.
Je t'aime.
Je t'aime.
No, I'm joking. But I guess, yeah, you're right. And I think we just have we need to call a spade a spade. It is harder in terms of international relationships if there is a passport, citizenship, dynamic. And this is not just Africa, the UK, Africa, the US. No. There's other countries around the world. Yeah. You can have a kind of Brazil and the US dynamic. There's countries which are quite close to each other, like Haiti and the US, the Caribbeans and the US. There's countries where sometimes there's one country that has the upper hand in terms of, well, preferably this is the country we would rather we live in. And don't get me wrong, there are people in countries, so in Africa, in the Caribbean, in other parts of the world, even like Asia and stuff like that, that have very good jobs. They have a lot of money. They can actually take care of people from the West. So I'm not trying to say that everybody from Africa wants to live in the West, but we know, if we're going to be honest, that there is a dynamics of people getting into relationships with other people for citizenship, for that passport, for that access. And that's another dynamic when it comes to international relationships, that it's hard to really decipher who is real, what is real, and then B, that dynamic itself can mess up your actual relationship when you're in it.
So imagine if having that dynamic and then adding it to the cons. So that's an additional baggage. That's additional issues.
And not to say it can't work. And I guess, this is where we need to kind of say, what are we trying to say when it comes to international relationships? What would we say to someone who's considering or is in a relationship with someone, in an international relationship with someone? And there is that dynamic of, okay, maybe they have the passport. Like, what do you do to try and kind of vet people that you're dating or potential partners? Because how do you ensure you're not swindled? And that is across the world. It's across the world. Across Europe, Asia, Africa, the Americans, even within America. You could meet someone within America. You could meet someone within the UK that will do the same thing because they could genuinely be dating you on the basis of trying to secure something from it.
We say that, but you could also meet someone that is in the same country as you, but you're a hardworking woman, you earn a lot of money, they might still be trying to take advantage of you.
Yeah, so it's the same.
So it's the same thing. So it's not just necessarily someone that's, that lives in Africa or lives in Asia or whatever. Someone in the UK could still see you and say, right, okay, she look like she's got,
the bag.
I'm gonna get some of that bag and whatnot. So,
and that happens with men as well.
That happens with men as well. Yeah,
there's men that get swindled by women from abroad that pretend to be a certain type of woman. He marries her, gets her to his country, they're living together, and then all of a sudden, once she's got her legitimate stay in the country, she turns into Medusa. And is actually being a nightmare and trying to turn him into stone in his own house.
I would advise against it.
Well, completely.
I would advise against.
So you would advise against marrying a girl from Nigeria just because she's from Nigeria?
Actually, scrap that. I don't want to get in trouble. No, I would. No. I would advise the man or woman to go through the process of setting the standards. Put certain things in place.
Yeah.
Make them, whoever they are, work hard to earn your love. I know. That's
a different dynamic, but
it's not a different dynamic.
It's almost like you're treating them worse than someone who lives near you.
But that's not treating them worse, though. You're still trying to put in place the standards that we've been talking about in our previous podcasts.
You're saying be extra cautious.
Be extra cautious because you don't know. When I say make them work for it or make them work, it's things like communication. Are they eager to communicate with you? Yeah. There are things that there will be easy red flags.
It's true. Look out for red flags.
A lot more.
If you're going to go
If
down
you're
that
gonna
route,
go-
I wouldn't do it. I personally wouldn't do it. I
wouldn't
wasn't
do it,
interested in
but-
any of the Congolese men that were interested in me because I just didn't want to take the risk.
But I wouldn't advise someone not to do it. But all I would just say is tread carefully. Because it's
a sticky one.
It's
It's a sticky one still.
It's a sticky one. This is why Nura and I discussed it before we put out this podcast because
This episode. Before we did this episode, we threw in international because from our backgrounds and the experiences that I've had, not personally in my own relationship, but the experiences that I've had it happen to people that I know. I know that this is a slippery slope, and I know that this conversation had to be had from this perspective as well. I think it will be dishonest of us to just talk about long distance without throwing in international.
I agree.
But long distance is an important part of relationships because a lot of relationships start off long distance or they need to be long distance at some point. And there's a dynamic around that is interesting to kind of touch on and talk about. But the international part of it, we were reluctant because we don't want to seem as if we're trying to say, dating anybody international is a no-go. Even though personally for me, it's a no-go. It's a deal breaker for me. It was always a deal breaker for me. And that's just because I always felt like it's hard enough to sustain a relationship and maintain it. I don't need the distance factor in terms of another country be thrown into the mix. I know it's going to be hard enough seeing each other. It's going to be hard enough finding time. It's going to be hard enough, missing each other. And then having to deal with flights to see each other was just a real different dynamic. And also, like I said, I was really afraid of the fairy tale complex. Like I said, us being so focused on this goal of finally getting to be together one day and then being together and the bubble bursting because it's not what either of us thought it would be or one of us. So for me, that was the biggest takeaway.
I agree. I think the same.
What I learned.
I think same
about
here.
long distance.
Same here, really. I think. Yeah, I would have said exactly the same thing. I think for me, it's a no for me, dog. I would say, but I would not advise against anyone doing it.
Yeah, I just think you have to be.
You just have
cautious.
to be cautious. Yeah,
extra cautious, extra
because,
vigilant with the red flags. Are they making an effort to see you?
Yeah.
Are they making an effort to show you how much you mean to them? Are they pulling their weight? You can't be trying to kind of drag the relationship along yourself.
Are they leaning heavily on you? That's another thing.
In what way?
To know if they're after the passport. If he or she cannot, you meet them and then all of a sudden they can't do anything without you. It's
a different. The dynamic is off as well because you want to be with a partner that wants you, not need you.
Not need you, exactly.
And
exactly.
Sometimes with international relationships, they need you.
They need you. Yeah.
And even in a relationship with someone in your own country, you shouldn't be with someone that needs to be with you, where it is absolutely beneficial for them to be with you. That to me is a bit of a red flag already because it's like,
I agree.
Well, how am I supposed to know whether or not you're with me out of necessity or because of genuinely being with me and I being the person you want to be with?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And no one's got time to start trying to decipher that and analyze all of that. So it's better to just save yourself all the hoorah and just find someone in your town, really.
But that's so negative. But I guess
is it negative?
It's not negative.
Is it really negative? It's just being honest. It's just being honest. It's like, it's good to have friends internationally. It's good to have, it's like, we're just friends from Senegal. But it's, it becomes really tricky. I mean, just looking at all the cons again and
we shouldn't look.
It's a bit stressful.
So it seems like we're saying long distance, yes. International, question mark.
Yeah, basically, yeah. With the word international, more work needed. A lot more work is
more vetting.
More vetting.
Because that's what I would tell. If I go back to what I would tell my daughter, because that's what I always try to refocus my thought process.
Vetting. Let's just talk about that word vetting because we know what vetting is. But if someone was listening to this now and they've just met a woman in Kenya, how would they go about vetting this woman?
This is why the long distance is a no-go. This is why international is a no-go for me. You need to find people in that area. You need, like, it's real because you can travel back there and they're on their best behavior. This is why for me it was just it's just a no-go, because it's like I cannot vet you properly.
Yeah.
And that for me is a big deal. Yeah, that's for me. For me, it was a big deal. It was like, and don't get me wrong, you could be with someone in the same country, in the UK or whatnot, and you don't know who they are. But you're adding like a whole heap of not knowing who they are when they're in a different country.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, how would you go about vetting that person? It's a trust thing. It seems like you're going to have to go a lot on trust. And that's the thing with international relationships and a bit on long distances relationship. You're doing a lot of trusting that person to be who they say they are and after what they say they're after. And that for me is like, I don't know if I'm about that life. But you got to vet. You got to, travel back often. Maybe you do want to pop up one day. Surprise, I came for Christmas. I don't know. But you do need to...
For you to start doing all of that. That's
what I'm saying. Sometimes it seems not trust issues, but when you're trying to get to know them in the beginning, it seems like that might be necessary because it's harder to know who you're actually dealing with. Yeah,
it is. Or you could just get the lie detector.
No, lie detectors are not even 100% reliable.
Yeah, so it's tricky.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
But our advice, okay, so just in terms of long distance and even international relationships, where you're in them and you're committed to them, what tips do we have, or what would we say you need to do to keep the relationship going? How can you maintain a long distance relationship? What would you say?
What would I say?
Maybe let's make it easier. So top 5 things.
Top 5 things I would say. Long distance, right? Or international as well.
Well, international is long distance too. So long distance.
I would say both parties should work on their communication. So more communication. Look out for red flags, I would definitely say.
Yeah, be more vigilant. Because you're definitely thinking about the fantasy.
Yes.
Of being together.
Yeah. I would say focus more on yourself while you have that.
What do you mean by that?
As in, get to know yourself a bit more, because obviously you're having this long distance relationship. You're getting to know that person, get to know who you are, get to know what you really want, especially from that person that you're in a relationship with. I think that would go a long way. Yeah, because it's easy to kind of lose yourself, isn't it, in this whirlwind of a long distance relationship. Yeah. A 4th tip will be more expressive. It leads to the communication part as well, but be more expressive. When I say more expressive, the I love yous, the I miss you, you have to say romance, more. Be more romantic, because you might not get to see the person more often, but make them feel like they're there with you at that point in time. I would say that would be my 4th one. And lastly? And the last one will be available for communication. Be available. You already said communication. Okay. We need a different... The last one is be available. Because that could lead to the whole the whole jealousy bit. If your partner's calling you, they can't get through to you. So it's more about technology. Make yourself available technologically. Make yourself available through technology. Yeah, because that would help. That I can see that causing a lot of rift and a lot of arguments if you're not available in a whole day, and then the jealousy will start kicking in. So your top 5 tips are communicate. What did I say? Communicate. Red flags. Look out for red flags. 3rd one, focus on yourself. Know what you want. Know what you want from the other person. Get to know yourself. The 4th one, be more expressive. Express your love to the person. Be more romantic. The 5th one is implement technology. Implement IT installation. If you don't... Make good use of technology. Be readily available. Yeah. Okay. How about you, Nouriel? I think my top things would be, I'm really going to channel, because I'm not a long distance relationship type of girl, even though at the beginning part, but we were in the same country. But even that, I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy that part of our relationship as much. Okay. Thank you.
I said I didn't enjoy it as much because we were far away from each other, so it was hard.
I'm joking.
Although I enjoyed it because it was the beginning of our
love.
Our love. But so what I would say tips wise is schedule time. Make sure you're scheduling time to see each other. Neither of you should be like unsure of when you're next going to see each other. Even if it's months and months away, you need to know and you need to have a plan for that next time. So you always have something to look forward to. I would agree with Frank. You should be available in a long distance relationship. That's one of the things you're kind of signing up for. And that's not just making yourself available on the phone, FaceTime, things like that. But also when you are planning to see each other, you should always make sure that this person is prioritized and you make yourself available. You pick up their calls, you return their calls, you move things around so that they can visit you or you can go and visit them. The third thing for me is make sure that you are realistic. So it's a bit like what you're saying about red flags.
Yeah.
Can this really work when you are together? So as much as you're long distance and you love each other and you want to be together, really look at their personality, really look at the things that they do and think about what that will translate to when you're actually together all the time and be realistic about that relationship. Don't get caught up in the fairy tale. Yeah. What number was that?
3.
Was that 3?
Mm-hmm. 4th one.
Damn. So my 4th one would be vet. Vet the hell out of them. I'm joking. Vet them. As much as you can, try and make sure that you check that they are who they say they are, because I think it's just harder when you're further away. I'm a lot more skeptical, I think, of long distance. So, I know that
photocopy their passport.
No.
Their driving license. Make sure their name is who they say
I just think vet them because really they're in a different country. They could be a criminal. Do you know what I mean? Like, you need to check, Google them.
It's true.
Check that they're not some sort of wanted criminal. Check that they're not some sort of,
Yeah, that's true.
They could be someone that does horrible things to women. I don't want to say the word, but, they could be, they could have a real sordid past. And I'm talking obviously as a woman to women. As a man, it'll be the same thing. Vet her. She could be a criminal. She could be a killer. For all you know.
True.
And it's harder for you to see any red flags in terms of that kind of stuff, of who they really say, if they are who they say they are, when you're not even in the same country as them.
Yeah.
And my last one would be commit properly to the relationship. Once you feel like you believe this person, you're trusting this person, give your all, because clearly people do give their all. 60% of them work. It's not a bad place to be. It is likely to work if you're both committed to it. Yeah. I just think
you have to ensure you're both committed to it.
Yeah. Not just you. Yeah. Commit and make sure that you're just as committed. I think
that's one of the issue. One party is normally committed to it, the other not so.
Or pretending to be.
Yeah. So you have to make sure you're both committed. That's really important.
That would be our tips on that. That's all we got to say on this. It's actually longer than we thought it would be. And maybe because we've done a lot of because we're like, this topic matters and it's important.
It really does. It's important.
It's important. Yeah. But I think it's one of those topics where people are going to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Really, if you think of it.
And they should.
Yeah. And I think I'm aware of that. I think I've come into this topic aware that really, this is one of those ones when someone meets someone, they fall for someone, a lot of what we say is going to go out the window.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Because you believe that it's going to work. And I think that's a big part of relationships. You've got to have that belief that it's got to work.
Make sure he or she has that belief as well.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think that's why I wouldn't venture into international specifically, because I know that in order to be in the relationship properly, I need to give 110%. And I have to be 100% sure. And I'm just like, I don't think I can be 100% sure that we're good. Even if they were from, Australia. I'm in the UK, they're from Australia. I just can't be 100% sure of A, who you are, and B, if we're actually going to end up together living in the same country without either of us missing our country and wanting to be in, the other country, or one of us using the other for other reasons. So
Yeah.
And
it could be any reason.
Any reason.
I know we've mentioned that, for papers, for passport, but it could be any reason.
It's just harder to know if someone is genuine when they're just so far away.
Yeah.
It's easier to put on an act if you only have to do it once every 3 months.
Exactly. But if you see that person every couple of days, every 2 days, every weekend, it becomes harder to.
They'll tire. They'll be like, I beg.
Yeah.
I don't like you. Or
you see the real me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, there's only so much acting someone can do.
Yeah.
But if someone is with you for your money or your passport or your status, like, it's going to be very easy for you to see it if you're with them all the time. But it's going to be really hard for you to really learn that if you only see them 3 times in a year.
And then there's a huge risk that you're now in a proper relationship in terms of like physical relationship, and then things fall apart because you haven't vetted them. They've been acting all these years, and that's
possible.
A huge hurt. It's very
a lot
possible.
of time
it's
wasted.
A lot of time wasted, and that's another thing we haven't really touched on: the time and effort.
Because you don't see each other as much. A relationship that might have been in the same proximity and fizzled out after 2 years.
Yeah.
Your one took 6 years to fizzle out because you only saw each other 20 times.
Yeah.
But the time is a big con. Yeah.
Right.
But it's weird because long distance relationships work, although that's not what these stats don't necessarily apply to international relationships, but long distance relationships work, and they can work because of that necessary commitment. I guess put it this way, they do work and they can work. And if they work, they're really worth it, but they're way riskier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And international relationships are even riskier than long distance.
Yeah, I agree.
Within the same country.
I agree with that.
But if you're both determined, the sky's the limit.
The sky's the limit. I agree.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think that's all we can say.
That's all we can say. Nothing more to give. Thank you all.
So you're gonna take that flight back to the UK from Lagos that you took in the last episode. Back to Lagos.
Flight back to London.
I can't. So that's it, guys. You've heard what we think about long distance and international relationships. We've covered what they are, the differences between the two, whether or not they really work, and we've given you some of our opinions on the pros and cons of each. We appreciate everyone that takes the time to listen to our podcast, and we're super grateful for all your engagement with us. We really hope you tune into the next episode where we'll be talking about situationships and casual dating. And in the current societal climate of dating, that would be an interesting one for us to touch on, don't you think?
Definitely agree.
Don't forget to email us any of your questions, comments, or dilemmas at itt.thepodcast@gmail.com or send us a DM on Instagram at ITT Podcast, or one word. Thank you for hanging out with us, and we'll speak to you on the next one.
Bye.